Metro Last Light Redux is a remaster of a sequel to Metro 2033, based on the book of the same name by Dmitry Glukhovsky. I feel like I've had a hard time finishing games recently, but I could not stop playing this. Why did I play this one instead of the original or the other two Metro games, you ask? Of course, because this game was, at some point, free on Epic Games, so... I'm gonna try to avoid spoilers, but you've been warned. The game directly follows Metro 2033, which ends with the nuclear bombing of a species known as the Dark Ones. The world was already becoming a wasteland, and nuclear missiles didn't help. The surface is too toxic and radioactive for anyone to live there, so any remaining humans live underground in the metro system of Moscow, where the game takes place. You play as Artyom, the man who gave the final word on the missiles, directly causing the obliteration of the Dark Ones. It is made very clear that the Dark Ones hadn't really harmed humanity at all, but simply could not communicate with us. One of the largest themes is a critique of the destructive nature of man. The Metro is split into several factions, none of which cooperate, such as the Rangers, the Nazi Fourth Reich, and the Stalinist Red Line. As a Ranger, you've received word of one surviving Dark One, and your goal in the game is to find it, and attempt to stop the impending war in the Metro with its help, in an effort to reconcile with your past decisions. As I mentioned, I haven't played the first game, so I don't know how similar this one is, but I absolutely love every element of design in this game. Before I continue, I will be referring to the game as Last Light, so that it doesn't get too repetitive. The game is described as stealth and horror, and I would agree, holy shit, this game can be terrifying. Seconds into the game, you're underground in the dark, and out of the shadows come several Dark Ones, and almost instantly, the rest of your team has vanished. Opening fire, you manage to kill all of the Dark Ones except one, which appears behind you and kills you. Turns out, that was a dream, and just Artyom's regret manifesting itself. From then on, the game does this great thing where you're given the illusion of control. One of the first things you get to do is try out all the different guns and then pick 3 to take with you. But then, you go outside, and within minutes, you're captured by the Nazis and all of those guns are taken away. In many sequences, you'll have someone traveling with you. As the game continues, this happens less and less until you're alone on the surface for the first time, left to fend for yourself. The game is very linear, but it doesn't feel that way. It usually feels like you're just doing whatever you can to survive. Speaking of survival, there are so many factors and resources you have to keep track of, but it never feels like a burden. One big issue I have with games such as Fallout is that you never have enough ammo and you can never find any, not to mention that managing your health and radiation is infuriating. Last Light solves this problem in several ways. First off, anywhere you go, there's a good chance there will be bodies, which always have abundant ammo and are also a good way of getting medkits. Giving the player nearly unlimited ammo is not fun, but they don't do that. There's still plenty of situations where you can run out of ammo, and when you do, there are alternative methods. You can throw knives or sneak up behind someone and knock out or kill them. Dead bodies also give you your selection of guns, as all characters carry them. The other important thing you have to manage is air. When you're on the surface, you must wear a gas mask or you can't breathe, but you don't have unlimited air. You need to find filters for the mask, which have to be switched out manually every few minutes. If radiation gets too dangerous for too long, you'll just die, so you have to stay away from radioactive hotspots, which are indicated by a Geiger counter. Another feature of the gas mask is that it's not always clean. Often you'll be splashed with dirt, mud, water, blood, etc. And this is already enough for the attention to detail to be praised. But then, you have to manually wipe the mask with your hand. It's a trade-off, because you'll be able to see better, but during that short animation, you're vulnerable. This is only one of my favorite intricate features in Last Light. Every little detail in this game goes toward immersing you in the experience. The most obvious example of this is the lack of a HUD. There's no health bar or stamina, and your objectives in the pause menu are displayed on your journal in writing. The only things you get to see are your ammo, how many medkits you have left, and any button prompts. But even these things are never on the screen permanently. I mentioned the gas mask and filter system earlier. Whenever you put on a new filter, instead of a timer appearing on the screen, your watch clicks, and then when the filter is low, the watch will start ticking. In addition to this, your character will start to breathe heavier, indicating that a new filter is necessary. Speaking of your watch, it also indicates whether you are visible to enemies or not, shown through a small blue light, which is either on or off. Obviously, it is helpful to know when enemies can see you if you're trying to sneak around. Most of the sequences underground in the Metro have the option of stealth, and often, stealth is beneficial. Several factors go into this gameplay. For one, fighting takes place underground, meaning all light is artificial. You can extinguish candles and lamps, and even turn off the breakers in a room, forcing your opponents to use flashlights. Your character also has a flashlight, but usually you can still see the game in the dark, and your flashlight is for much darker situations, or when dealing with certain mutants. If the lights are out, you'll hear people in the room talk and send someone to check on the breakers, where you'll be waiting in the shadows. Enemies will call out when they see you or when they reload, and typically you're able to take out a few targets silently before having to engage the entire room. Of course, your guns can have silencers, making that first part easier. Once they do know you're there, you can still hide behind things and get behind your enemies. This is no Yiga Clan hideout, where it's either stealth or not. These gunfights with humans are only half of the action. The other half is combat with mutants, a result of the radiation on the surface. When fighting mutants, stealth is never a priority. This is usually done on the surface, but there are some varieties of mutants found underground as well. There are several tense scripted segments, often where you're waiting for something slow to happen, and you'll have to fight off an onslaught of monsters while doing so. In one such scene, you're pushing a rail car out of the way with a car in one of the tunnels. As you're doing this, tens of watchmen, which are dog-like creatures, are running up behind you and jumping at you, while more still jump down from a large hole in the ceiling that goes to the surface. In another, you're in a slow elevator, and watchmen are jumping out of holes in the wall. Fighting mutants is more about frantic shooting and barely having time to reload before something else is pouncing on you. Another type of mutant you'll have to deal with are spider bugs, which, as their name suggests, create webs. The game loves to throw you into a dark cave and scare you with several large spider bugs. Now keep in mind, these things can't be shot, at least not immediately. When you shine your flashlight or lighter near them, they start to burn and eventually flip over, allowing you to shoot them. But when multiple are around you, it's not easy to scare off all of them at the same time. Being stuck in a dark cave hearing goopy spider noises with only a lighter is horrifying. Last Light is very good at making these terrifying scenarios. Underground tunnels with low visibility are a great setting for horror, and creeping around with just a flashlight is simply chilling. The atmosphere is excellent, with abandoned buildings and broken down metro tunnels. When you're on the surface, it's eerily quiet, the only interruptions being the growls and roars of nearby creatures. In contrast, when you're underground, you can usually hear several people talking, all of which want to kill you. Otherwise, you're alone in the dark in a cave, hearing every movement of monsters that also want you dead. Some of the best action and terror happens in scripted moments where survival seems impossible. In one part, you get tossed off a raft into water infested with shrimp, aquatic mutants that spit poison. And then, once you're back on the boat, the shrimp continue to swarm onto the boat, and you have to shoot them off to prevent the boat from sinking. There's another scene where you're riding alongside a train in a rail car and have to board the train without being shot. The entire game feels like one huge event that doesn't have any seams. There are levels, 39 of them, but the only thing in between these levels is a loading screen, on which Artyom updates his journal on the story up to that point. That concludes most of the cohesive thoughts I have on Last Light, but there's a few extra things I'd like to mention. I don't really have many complaints, so most of these are just things I think are cool. If I had to have a complaint, it would be with the graphics of the people and some of the dialogue, but those are two things that are never perfect in video games. And they never interrupt the immersion, so it's not a real complaint. Sometimes you start a level with not enough air, and by the time you get anywhere, you've already died because it saves however much air you had before that level. But the only time that happened to me, there was a body nearby with extra filters. Okay, a lightning round. There's these cool sections with EMPs where your flashlight doesn't work, forcing you to use a lighter, which makes everything creepier. I like that the story is based on an alternate history, so all the factions and issues presented feel relevant. I like the Gatling gun at the end. I like squeezing past people in crowded rooms, especially the scene during the Nazi speech. That part's cool.
But D6 has been seized and occupied by Sparta. First to Führer! What do you want? Adiobre! Shoot yourself in front of the guards and escape! What the hell are you doing here then? Go get them!
I like that the characters feel developed. The game causes a unique feeling where you're scared, but you know you have to continue. This is going to sound overdramatic, but it's like you actually care whether Artyom survives or not. I like how intuitive Last Light is in general, but specifically how certain lighting above doors will subtly tell you where to go. I like how everything in the game feels necessary and nothing ever feels tedious. And last of all, I like that the game is fun.
If it's not fun, why bother?